Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 64 of the Revive Yourself podcast. Here we go.
Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Have you got a health issue that just won't go away no matter what you try? Then welcome to the Revive Yourself podcast, where we reveal the secrets to long-lasting health by getting to the root cause of problems that no one else is talking about. So you can have more energy, clear skin, healthier hair, a leaner physique, more confidence, and most importantly, do the things you love and live the life you deserve. Here's your host, Ryan Martin.
So guys, welcome to episode 64, and as always, hope you're doing well, hope you're enjoying the springtime. Weather over here has been pretty good recently. It's been really nice. It's nice to get into spring, and it's obviously really phenomenal for those of us that are keen on our health, you know, if days just feel like so much better when the sun's out. And so just a little catching up and stuff, you know, as always, the free mini course is still going strong for anyone with chronic health conditions. Want to head over to www.reviveyourself.co. We've got our free 4-day mini course there, which is being fantastic for a lot of people, getting lots of people through that. A lot of good work getting done by a lot of good people there. And as always, guys, as I said, if you're actually dealing with a chronic health issue and you need some one-to-one help, a deeper issue, then you can always contact me on there or send me an email at ryan@reviveyourself.co, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. There's been lots going on. I actually wanted to have an interview with Terry Tiddart today, all about common law and about what happens if you sign a birth certificate, etc. But our recording wasn't great, so I want to get him back on and do it again, because I don't want to put out a poor recording for you. I want you to actually hear what's going on. So instead, what I've done is I've bumped up our interview with Dr. Shaun Baker to today. Now, this is going to be really eye-opening for you guys. I had Phil Escott on here already, who is a big proponent of the carnivore diet. Now, Dr. Shaun Baker has been eating this way as well, just all meat diet for 2 years now. He's a former orthopedic surgeon. He was top of his class. I mean, in fact, he'll go into the story that he was actually their poster boy for a long while, until we started to try and move some lifestyle changes in, and the hospital didn't like that. But for someone who's been in the medical industry, who was a vegan before, and then he turned to an all carnivore diet, the results he's had and he's been having with people have been phenomenal. And as I always say, guys, on our show, we have no dogma here. We're all about finding what works for people, not just doing stuff based out of a fear-based dogma. So if you're vegan, then keep an open mind and listen to him. If you're somewhere in between who hasn't tried this, then give it a listen. But it's really interesting, guys, because, you know, we are all different. We're as different on the inside as we are on the outside. And what works for one person might not necessarily work for everyone else. There is no one right way. But it's a really fascinating show. He's a really great guy. And actually, also, I stopped the recording, and then me and Shaun started to have a little chat between ourselves. So I actually clicked the recording again, and I got a couple of little gems that I'm going to stick in at the end for you. So we're going to come off the show. I'm going to say goodbye, and then if you stay around, a little bonus feature is going to be in there for you guys. Okay, so without further ado, here's Shaun. Enjoy the show, and I'll see you on the other side. So, Shaun, how are you doing today, mate?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Southern California. Ready to start. Had a nice steak to start the day, so I'm ready to go.
So, I mean, you've literally been taking the internet by storm. I'd say definitely Instagram through your carnivorous diet, and also I think, do you know Phil Escott?
Who is that?
Phil Escott. Do you know Phil Escott?
Yeah, I know. I'm aware of Phil. Yeah, he's a member of a couple of Facebook groups that I have, and I've talked to him kind of online a couple times. Yeah.
So Phil. So basically, I mean, I first heard you speak on Mind Pump podcast, and I was like, whoa, I need to get this. Is interesting. And then actually, I was put in touch with Phil through someone, one of our sort of mutual friends, and he was talking about things. I talked about meat. I actually got him on the show as well, and we had a great talk about things. But this all meat diet, you know, especially with the way that the world's going right now, with so much veganism and being vegan being such a well, it's just all over the media, really. Everyone's going vegan, I think. To actually go the other way, just to go, you know what, I don't agree with that, or that's not worked for me, yeah, and just go into carnivore diet is quite a bold move. So for people out there, just to get the backstory, why, or how did you even get into this? I mean, you played around with keto first, didn't you? And you sort of fell into this.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm in my 50s now, and I was just kind of watching, my health get a little less good when I was in my 40s, and I started playing with different diets, and I kind of experimented with most diets. I had a very plant heavy, almost, I would call it a vegetarian diet with a little bit of, lean meat like fish in there, a little bit of chicken, avoiding red meat, and then I just kind of, I just didn't feel that well, and so I experimented, went to paleo, and then went to low carb, and then I went to keto, and then finally I started reading about the people that had been doing this, recently, a carnivorous diet, and then also some of the historical stuff. And I said, well, let's try it for 30 days. It's not going to hurt for 30 days. And I had such a good experience with that. And, one of the things that, as a physician, some of the things that I thought were basically age-related, just normal age-related things went away, which I thought was pretty interesting. And but I said, well, 30 days is good. I'll go back to what I was doing before. And I did, and I immediately felt worse. And so I said, well, I'd rather feel good than feel worse. And I'm a very competitive athlete, and I was noticing, that it had been helping my athletic performance. So I switched back to it. And the whole time I've stayed, my health has continued to get better and better as every month goes by. I see something sort of improvement, and I continue to improve athletically. And that's something that, as you get into your, up into the years, it's hard to do, particularly when you get, into your 40s and 50s. And so I've continued to notice improvements in strength, body composition, endurance, recovery, the health benefits, which, are many. And so I continued doing that. And then I started seeing a lot of people that kind of joined me in this. And, interestingly, a large percentage of them, if not the vast majority of people, are seeing the similar results. And so I think, there's unfortunately, the nutrition science is really, it's not very good science. It's not that there's not good people doing it. It's just that it's really hard to answer the questions. And all the data out there that says, well, meat is bad for you, it's really hopelessly confounded with the fact that someone who eats a lot of meat typically will eat a lot of donuts and French fries and Cokes, and they don't exercise, and they don't really care much about their health. And so you have this huge, what we call a healthy user bias. And when you eliminate that, what I've done, and what now thousands upon thousands of other people have done, they've seen that if you just focus on just meat in the diet, you get healthy. And so it's most likely what we've all been saying is it's the refined flours, the sugars, the processed vegetable oils that are often eaten with meat, which are probably the problem. It's not the meat itself.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, being with someone that deals with a lot of people with chronic health conditions, I've been doing it for a long time. That's the what I always try to think is that. Look, I have people on the show all the time. So I've had Terry Tiddard on here. He says he's like a staunch vegan, very much against meat. Quotes all these studies. When I tell people I'm going to get yourself on the show and feel, they're like, why are you doing that? I was like, well, because I need to just explore all the options. I have no dogmatic views. I want to do what works, and what works for someone might not work for someone else, and that's fine. But the key feature, I mean, you can be vegan and be extremely unhealthy. You can be a carnivore and be extremely unhealthy, But the key feature about the main things that these people that live a healthy, holistic lifestyle that are doing generally is, as you say, they all cut out refined sugar. They all cut out, generally, a lot of people cut out caffeine and soy, and then they cut out pasteurized, homogenized dairy, and then they cut out wheat and gluten, I always say to people, these are the big players. Because when you do that, I mean, generally, people that go on a vegan diet to start with anyway, they've been eating terribly. So they go on a vegan diet, they cut out they go vegan because they're generally trying to get a health kick because they probably may have been a bit ill or something, and they cut out all these things, and they start eating more fruits and vegetables, got far more fibre, and all of a sudden for 30 days, I mean, short term, I found myself, it was phenomenal for me, short term, got past 3 months, not so great. Notice I have a lot of clients. I do have a lot of sick vegans and a lot of sick vegetarians, but that's the main area. I always try to say to people, no matter where you're going with these people, generally there's a big section where they lay in the middle, and it's drinking more water and getting rid of all these refined, processed, toxic foods, or inflammatory foods, highly inflammatory foods, and people seem to perform better. Now, you mentioned there quickly that you you're an athlete. And I noticed the other day you were on Owen Franks' podcast, or Ben Franks. Which one was it? Owen's?
Yeah, we had Owen on our podcast.
You had Owen on your podcast, cool. Because I actually played out in Canterbury myself with one of them. Played actually with the Crusaders back in the day. I was 23 at the time, almost 10 years ago. So played rugby at high level. Like yourself, you just play rugby, right?
Yeah, I played in the Waikato in New Zealand.
Oh, did you? Awesome. Yeah, also you probably have some mutual friends then out there. But so how old was you when you played out there?
Oh, it was when I was in my 20s, man. That was 25 years ago, 26, 7 years ago. So that was a long time ago. There was guys like, there's some of the All Blacks in the competition I played with, guys like Richard Lowe and Warren Gatlin and Graham Purvis. Yeah, he was on. Yeah, he's a coach. He's a case coach of Wales now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Wales and the Lions.
He played for, I can't remember one of the teams. It was either Fraser Tech or Hamilton Old Boys. I can't remember which team he was on, but he was. We would play in the club, in a club league, and we'd run against those guys every once in a while. So
people. No, so I was going to say, people don't understand that it's a bit like our cricket system over here. Like over there, you have your clubs that are like not professional, and then you have your franchises or like your super clubs. Well, they have their provinces, then they have their super clubs, and then they have the All Blacks. It's a bit like our cricket system over here. I mean, different to America, where it's generally just pro sport, right? They have over there. That's why it's the grassroots over there and stuff, and so you get to meet and play with a lot of top players as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think, and back then, I don't think they really were just provincial. They didn't really have the super teams at that point. That was,
of course, yeah.
Before that, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when you were out there, 26, 27, playing out there, how was you eating?
I ate a lot of lamb and kumara. In New Zealand, that's a big dish out there. But it was, I would say most people would consider relatively healthy. I mean, I ate, low fat dairy. I ate a lot of, I ate meat and vegetables and whole grains and cereals and fruits and vegetables. And I had a little bit of junk food, but not too much. I mean, I was pretty conscious about it. So, I mean, I always ate. As an athlete, you try to get as much nutrition or at least what you believe is nutrition as possible. So I've always eaten, better than I just didn't have a junk food diet like many people do. Yeah. It was certainly better than I'd say 90% of the people out there.
Cool. So just trying to work out. So when you were there, you're 27, you're playing rugby. Obviously, you're gonna try and eat well because rugby's a tough game to play, right? You're up and down the field, making big tackles. You've got a lot of collisions, a lot of information to deal with afterwards. How would you compare yourself now to then in terms of how you feel, how you recover? Because now you're on an all meat diet, right? Most people, people out there that don't know, Shaun broke the 500 metre world record rowing for 50-year-olds. I think it's for over 50s, correct?
Yeah, for 50-year-old, yeah. So 1:14.6, I think was my time. Yeah.
Well, and so people always talk about how important carbohydrates are, especially for sports that require glucose, etc. So how do you feel compared to when you're competing in rugby, like your performance and your recovery?
Well, I think my recovery is pretty good, excellent. I mean, it's hard to say, to really go back 25 years, but I know certainly compared to even 10 years ago, it's far, far superior. And I know that from a strength standpoint, I'm not too far off what I was in my 20s and early 30s. I'm very close right now, which is an improvement from where I was in my my early to mid 40s. So I've kind of gone back 10, 15 years as far as athletic health. I mean, I don't really have any joint pain anymore, which is something that I was starting to get. As I got in my 40s, I'd have some knee pain, a little bit of shoulder pain, a little bit of biceps pain, and that's all gone, which is, I think, remarkable. Allows me to, I'm not taking the collisions like I was in rugby, but I'm training extremely hard. I mean, I go very hard, very high intense stuff in the conditioning stuff, and I lift very heavy still. And I can do that day in and day out without really much trouble at all. I mean, I really have to take a day off to recover. Sometimes I will just because of schedule. Sometimes a scheduling issue will cause me to take a day off and then, or something like that. But my recovery capacity is the best it's been in my life, quite honestly. And I think a lot of people that do this tend to say the same thing. But I can still get up and dunk basketballs. I can still, jump really well. I can still sprint hard. And so I don't know that I would want to get out on a rugby field at that level.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because I know you. You're still lifting, right? So you're still getting information, etc. And you're still dealing with lots of physical activity. And obviously, running into big Pacific Islanders is a bit different. But in terms of the way you perform.
Yeah, I'm glad you said. That's one of the things I noticed, that running into the Pacific Islanders was the worst people to collide into. I think they have an extra layer of bone or something like that. I'd rather hit somebody from Russia or somebody else than a Pacific Islander. Those guys were definitely thick.
Yeah, it's like hitting granite. I hit a couple of times. I used to play number 10, so they used to go after me like fun. And it wasn't fun a lot of the time, but it was fun, but not when they were coming down your channel. In fact, one of my roommates was he actually plays for Ulster now. Rodney Ayew. He's 100. I mean, he was 120 kgs at like 19 years old, and the guy is just phenomenal. Things that he could do on a pitch, move people. But so basically, what I'm just trying to get out for people out there, really, Shaun, is, I mean, you feel good on this diet, and because you're a former heart surgeon, right? So this is big news for people who are former surgeon. And
yeah, I did. I was an orthopedic surgeon, so I would replace knees and hips and shoulders and fix trauma, broken bones, and that sort of stuff.
Cool, perfect. So the people out there, I mean, you've been through the medical industry, so people out there, first of all, they'd be saying, surely eating all meat is going to be bad for your health in terms of longevity, right? Surely, I mean, we all hear about red meat's carcinogenic, which, I mean, the studies there, like the article Tobacco Science, really. And then, obviously, just longevity, like, surely eating meat's not good for your digestion. A lot of people, generally, I always talk about the quality of meat, but how, I mean, being a doctor, I mean, surely this flies in the face of a lot of stuff you learn medically, or even through going through the school, etc. I mean, how different is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely opposite of what we've been taught, what we've been told. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, the evidence that points to that is really based on some shaky assumptions and some really shaky nutritional epidemiology, where most of the data is what we call associational data, where they'll just say, here's a whole bunch of people that eat a little more meat than the other people, and they don't do as well. And again, when you clump those people together, you're not looking at people like me that care about their health, that are exercising, that aren't eating, all the other junk food that typically goes with it. So that's the biggest problem there is there. And, the thing that we're seeing, objectively is, people going on all meat diets, all these things that are bad, that we know tend to be bad for us, based on other associations like high blood pressure, excessive body fat, high levels of inflammation, things like insulin resistance. All of those things improve significantly when people go on a carnivorous diet. Now, the cholesterol thing is kind of interesting, because sometimes the cholesterol tends to be variable. Some people, their cholesterol will go up, some people won't change. Like mine, it really didn't change much. My HDL went up a little bit. It was already pretty low, but it went up a little higher.
So you've run tests now, yeah? You've tested.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did a bunch of tests, and I went over that with a guy named Rob Wolf on the Paleo Solution podcast a while ago. So we went through a whole litany of labs. Some of them were controversial, but I mean, the thing is, cholesterol is another one of those things. It's an associational marker that only really kind of shows a weak effect. It's consistent, but it's weak. And there are so many better things to predict, cardiovascular disease that you can look at.
But Shaun, just quickly with that, your body, I mean, the less cholesterol you eat, the more it makes. The more cholesterol you eat, the less it makes. No?
Well, I mean, that's a general truth. Yeah, I mean, your liver is going to make about 80% of how much cholesterol. So if you don't eat very much, your liver will make enough for you to have. Yeah. Cholesterol is not there to hurt us. It has a function. Yeah. It has a number of functions in hormone synthesis. It has functions in structural repair. It has an immune function, helping us fighting disease. So we need cholesterol in our body. And there's really no such thing as good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. It's all this. If you look at the cholesterol in HDL and the cholesterol in LDL, it's the exact same stuff. It's just when and how it's trafficked. And there's a whole system. And a guy named Dave Feldman is showing pretty profoundly how cholesterol can change even 100 points, using the U.S. numbers, in 1 day, or not 1 day, in 1 week. He's changed his cholesterol by 100 points in 1 week, which shows you how dynamic it is. And so the fact that we take one measurement once a year and all of a sudden say, now you need to go on a drug, to me is kind of insane. And we also know there's a lot of, again, associational studies, again, with the limitations shown by association, that people who have higher cholesterol tend to live longer. They tend to have less cancer. They tend to have less neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So it's just, there are reasons when cholesterol may contribute to the end effect of atherosclerosis, but there's a lot of other things that have to be in place. Systemic inflammation, insulin dysregulation, and all those other things have to be lined up, I think, first before cholesterol becomes really much of an issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ansel Keys' study that was one that talked about fat and cholesterol. I mean, there's lots of books out there, there's loads of studies out there that debunk this for years now, but it still gets thrown around. I mean, even though it takes a long while to filter down to the mainstream, but this gets thrown around, and people. I mean, cholesterol. You said before, LDL and HDL. They're just delivery systems, like high density lipoproteins, low density lipoproteins. They're not actually cholesterol, and people don't understand. Like, cholesterol is a precursor for so many sex hormones that are crucial for us. And people talk about it. And the funny, because vegans always talk about heart disease, but one of the funny things is, I think I even heard you mention this before. One of the I think the vegans have got the highest rates of heart disease. Isn't this correct?
Well, I mean, no, it's just that the number one killer of vegans is heart disease and vegetarians. So I mean, if you're going to die of something, no matter what you eat, you're most likely going to die of heart disease. Now, if the vegetarians have a slightly lower rate of heart disease, they have a higher rate of cancer. And so the question becomes, you're going to die at some point. Do you want to die of heart disease? Do you want to die of cancer? Not that we all get to make that choice, but it's absurd to suggest that their diet protects them from heart disease when clearly they get it too, and they get it in high numbers. And so, there's so many things when we look at longevity. Like the people like to point out different populations. And they like to point out people like in Okinawa or the Seventh-day Adventists out in California. And say, well, they lived a longer time and they had a plant-heavy diet. Well, I can say, well, there's people like in Iceland that have a meat-heavy diet, and they live just as long or longer. Or the people in Hong Kong, which eat more meat than almost anybody in the world, and they live the longest in the world. So the problem with those epidemiology studies when looking at longevity is diet is not the biggest factor. Things like socioeconomic status, access to healthcare, cultural support systems, lifestyle, lack of smoking, those things have a far bigger impact on life expectancy than just saying, I ate a plant-based diet, I'm going to live longer. That's kind of BS. It doesn't really matter what you eat. You got to do all those other things like we kind of talked about ahead of time. And then the diet has some impact, not a huge impact. Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to one of the guys I was talking to the other day, they was talking about, I'm going vegan now, etc. And I was like, okay, cool. I generally just ignore things. I need to get rid of my Facebook timeline. I ignore things, but people put stuff, and sometimes I'm just like, I can't resist. And he was talking about, everyone in the blue zones eats soy. I was like, well, or this blue zone eats soy. I was like, well, that's not the soy you're eating. Have a read of the whole soy solution. Trust me, it's not the soy you're eating. And secondly, there's a lot more going on in that blue zone than just eating soy, like the air quality, the sunshine they're getting, the movement they're getting daily. I mean, loads of things. And as you said, the human body, different areas there, some people eat, if you're Indians, they don't eat meat, for example, or different parts of the world. In other parts, it's like the Inuits only eat lots of fat, and lots of different tribes. The body has got an ability to adapt. I mean, I was talking to Paul Checker about this, and we were citing studies that the enteric system from mouth to anus. The studies, I think it was, I can't remember the doctor we talked about before. I'm trying to remember that name. Hopefully, will come to me. He did studies in this, and he looked at vegetarians versus meat-based eaters, and he noticed that meat-based eaters, their digestive tracts were far longer than vegetarians. Oh no, sorry, the other way around. It's far shorter than vegetarians. Our intake system actually started to grow depending on where you were in the world and what you ate. And so the body has got this great ability to adapt. But I think it's more, as you mentioned, the general gist of not eating all the rubbish. What did they have in common? They all stay away from all these things that, people know how bad refined sugar is, right? And then you got everything else that we're putting in. Especially, it's not great over here. I know in America, your food, high fructose corn syrup, they're putting in everything they can, soy is in everything. A lot of it's GMO, etc. And it's not great. So people are going to be wondering, Shaun, what does your diet look like? Like, how much meat do you eat? Because so people can't see you. If you do, go and look at Shaun. Shaun's. You've got a couple of websites, haven't you, Shaun? What's the best one for people to go on?
Well, obviously my Instagram is pretty popular.
Yeah, your Instagram's the best one.
Yeah. Shawn Baker, 1967, SHAWN BAKER, 1967. I started a website called meatheals.com, which is pretty cool. It has all these success stories of, getting into the, nearly hundreds of people that have just gone on a meat-based diet, and they've cured all kinds of, medical problems like rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's disease and eczema and psoriasis and depression and anxiety and joint, arthritis, and the list goes on and on. It's almost everything you think of, blood pressure problems. diverticulitis. All these things have gotten better.
Diverticulitis is one that people talk about eating too much meat. It's a problem for it, right? I mean, there's a couple of athletes that people have come out and even said, like, this the reason they had it was because they were eating too much meat. There's lots of controversy around here, but I think I've even heard you say, like, MDs and PhD, just because they got them doesn't mean they know everything. And a lot of these things are, once again, the science isn't great because they're not looking into everything else they're doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the most popular athlete that supposedly had diverticulitis associated with a high meat diet was a guy named Brock Lesnar, a UFC and a WWE. I can't remember what the Wrestling Federation is now, but the problem with him was he was apparently taking a lot of painkillers at the same time because he's beating his body up. And so what happens with him when you take a lot of painkillers, particularly opiate painkillers, the gut motility really gets messed up and slows down, and that probably more than anything was probably the cause of that, not the meat. And you think about it, when we've studied plenty of people, there's plenty of studies out there looking at people that have had their colon removed, and we can look at ileostomies where they don't have a large intestine, they just have a small intestine, and they look at people when they digest meat. There's really nothing that comes out. It's just a little bit of liquid. There's nothing that would really mechanically cause, diverticulitis. And so what we're often seeing is people eat a lot of seeds and indigestible materials, like a lot of the fiber. Shows more diverticulin. In fact, there was a nice study done, I think, in 2014 by a guy named Dr. Peary. I think it's Peery, and he looked at like 1,500 people with colonoscopies, and he found the people that had the highest incidence of diverticula, which are the little pouches associated with diverticulitis, were people on the highest fiber diets. And so, there's a lot of information that kind of goes against, again, the associations with meat and diverticulitis are, again, these epidemiologic studies. And again, if you're eating a lot of meat, most likely you're eating a lot of sugar and you're eating a lot of junk food, and you're doing all these things that make people unhealthy. So it's a kind of a false association in my view. Yeah. But I mean, you were talking about, how much do I eat? What my daily routine is?
Well, I was just saying to people, you're a big guy, right? You're not the. I mean, you must be pushing 6'5"?
Yeah, I'm 6'5", and I'd have to calculate how many stones I am right now. I'm probably 17, 18 stone.
Yeah, you're a big guy.
So almost 18 stone, I guess, is what you guys, if that's what you guys like to use. I'm 111, 112 kilograms, 245, 250 pounds, something like that, depending on the day. But I typically, I'll put it in kilograms, typically about 2 kilograms a day of meat. I usually have it half in the morning, half in the evening, usually 2 meals a day. And mostly it's just red meat and steaks, sometimes a little bit of hamburgers. I will have a little bit of seafood from time to time, typically like shellfish, shrimp, something like that. I'll have a little bit of dairy from time to time. I find for me that dairy tends to be kind of problematic sometimes if I have anything more than just a small amount. So I tend to avoid and limit dairy to infrequently in smaller amounts. Sometimes maybe a piece of cheese on a hamburger or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty much, I haven't had fruits or vegetables, and it's getting close to 2 years now. And I honestly, my health is as good as it's been in a couple of decades, really. And it's just remarkable. I get such good sleep. I maintain a lean, muscular physique without really trying that hard. I mean, I train really well. Great energy, great mood, great libido, great sexual function, great, no joint pain. My digestion is perfect. I don't have any issues with my digestion. I have a bowel movement about once a day. No problems with that. So I know a lot of people are concerned about that stuff. But yeah, it's been overall, I think working really well for me.
It's interesting. I want to talk about the digestion, but when you talk about so you eat twice a day, right? Is that just down to appetite, or is that out of choice?
It's mostly down to appetite, and again, this is one of the things that I sort of maintain. When I consider humans just, smart animals. I mean, we're still animals, and if you look at how any animal feeds itself, it just eats when it's hungry, and when it's not hungry, it doesn't eat. We're humans, we're sitting there constantly entertaining ourselves, talking and being distracted and just continuing eating. We have a whole entire snack food industry that supports that and advertises to that. But, really, I mean, assuming you're eating the appropriate nutrition for your species, your appetite should be pretty well regulated. And so, usually I'm hungry twice a day. That's when I eat. Sometimes I only eat once a day. Sometimes I'll eat 3 or 4 times a day. It just kind of depends where my appetite takes me. And, and sometimes, obviously, sometimes you're hungry and you don't have food right in front of you. So you have to kind of delay a little bit. But I don't do all this sort of intentional fasting stuff. I don't eat very frequently. So if you want to say, going long times between meals is a good thing, and I think it probably is for most people. I do that, but I don't sit there with a stopwatch and say, okay, I'm not going to eat for the next 16 hours, because if I get hungry 12 hours and I'm only feeding myself one thing, it's like my body's saying, there's only one thing you're getting. Why are you hungry? Well, I'm hungry because I need energy, and I need some, some structural materials to build what I'm building. And so I just listen to my appetite, and it works pretty well. And I think for most people that are relatively healthy, now there are people that are so metabolically dysregulated, their appetite signals are so messed up from years and years of sort of abuse and this sort of hormonal disarray that they're in, that their appetite signals are kind of messed up, and they may find that a scheduled eating thing might help them kind of get them out of that system. But I think once you're, in a natural human state, your appetite and your eating frequency and schedule should be pretty effortless. And I look at it like, for me, I'm big, I'm relatively lean, but I'm not walking around at 4% body fat like a bodybuilder. And I don't really want to be, because it's really not a natural state to be in. It's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's not healthy.
And so, for those guys that I want to get shredded, so that's fine. You may have to do something unnatural. You may have to, do all these weird things with your diet to get you there, but don't pretend that that's how humans normally exist. Because even if you look at these indigenous populations, they're lean. They're not obese by any way, but they're not walking around with, with shredded everything.
They're very lean. They're not ripped up, because that's not the athletes are doing things that they're probably not doing, or as you said, like bodybuilders example, they're not that's what they're going for. That's like sculpting your body in that way. That's not how we generally are. If you look at any of the things, and you're completely right. So quickly, Shaun, you had this pure meat for 2 years. You never had a beer in 2 years.
No, I wouldn't say I haven't had beer. I just never enjoyed beer. I'll have a glass of wine. I've got a girlfriend from France, and she likes some wine. So once in a while, I still want to have a glass of wine. I'll have a glass of wine with me. I'm not a dogmatic purist. If I want to have something, I'll have it. I generally just don't want to have it. If somebody put a piece of cake in front of me and I wanted it, I would take a bite. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I know I might feel crappy afterwards. And I don't usually do that. But like I said, for me, I would say dairy would be the thing I kind of will occasionally quote unquote cheat with. But I honestly,
like an ice cream or something.
Well, not even. I might eat not even maybe a yogurt or something like that,
okay.
Something like that. But I will. I honestly don't crave those things, and that's the one thing that people really have a hard time getting their mind around, because we live in such a culture now where we have so many choices, and it's constantly put in front of our faces, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's heavily advertised. Those foods are designed to be extremely hyper palatable and flavorful, and we want to eat them all the time. But if you go back a few hundred years, or certainly 20,000 years ago, you would think about how many flavors or varieties did humans have back then. Almost none. So we're really just you would have eaten whatever animal killed. You might have got some fruits and berries, occasionally. But the variety in the human existence for the 3 million years that we've been on the planet, if you believe in the evolutionary theory, it was very minimal. And now we have, 100 flavors of potato chips and 75 different flavors of soda. And so we feel like we've got to constantly get a new flavor in our mouth. And to me, again, I'm in my 50s. I've tried all that stuff. I'm not really interested in it anymore. I'm just interested in good, healthy nutrition. And I honestly feel wonderful after, I just had a nice ribeye steak for breakfast. I feel great after having it. I totally look forward to having it. When I was preparing it, I was sitting there salivating, like, I can't wait to eat it. I'm kind of like my dogs, they get excited when they're out to eat. And for me, that's what nutrition should be about. Now, we sort of changed nutrition into a form of entertainment, whether it's an entertainment to entertain our taste buds, or just we tie a lot of social entertaining with that stuff. And I think those things are separated from nutrition. And, if you want to socialize, you can figure out how to do that without sticking a cupcake in your mouth, I think. And, again, this is a thing that many people, when they do this, and when I tell them, how do I get through these cravings? Because I really want to eat that, whatever, that carbohydrate-based food. I'm just like, just eat enough. If you eat enough nutrition, because what your body really wants is nutrition. It doesn't want necessarily a cupcake, but it wants, micronutrients. It wants protein. It wants fat. Those are the essential things that we have to have in our body. And so if you're giving yourself enough of that, all of a sudden those cravings are really quelled. They become minimal, from a physiologic standpoint. Before, when you're eating a high carb based diet and you get really hungry, it doesn't matter what's in front of you. There's a big tray of junk food in front of you. You're going to eat that because you're so hungry. Right now, when you're not doing that, you fill up on meat, and then all of a sudden, if you're a little hungry and there's some junk for you, you're like, no, I'm okay. I can wait an hour. I can wait 2 hours.
That's the key.
I think that's a big difference, I think.
Yeah, so I was just saying that is the key. Yeah, because I always say to my clients around Christmas or something, I say, if you're going to go out to a party, if you go and eat your food beforehand, you're going to be full, you're going to be satiated, you're not going to want to grab that food. And I always say, like, studies have shown organic produce, proper organic produce, is 40% more satiating than conventional food anyway. So you actually need less. People say it's more expensive. We'll say, well, we actually need to buy less, and you're full, because as you just said there, your body wants nutrition. So once it's said, oh, I've had enough of that, that's fine, you stop eating, rather than keeping on eating. And as you said, these foods that have been made for the bliss factor, the right amount of sugar, the right amount of salt to keep you eating, keep you going, they're not actually foods. I mean, you can't find them in nature. They're what Franken foods. They're things that we as man have made, and they're a big problem, and they're massively, as you said, it is a lot to do with socialising. And you said you can socialise. You just. I mean, once it comes to understanding your body, and you just don't have to eat it. You know that once you start eating those things, it's really hard to stop. You know, once you pop, you can't stop, sort of thing, with Pringles, and it goes on. But just quickly, so you never get bored of eating meat, Shaun? You never get bored of it. You're not like, oh my god, I've got another steak. Oh.
Well, I mean, I really enjoy it. I mean, I honestly don't get bored of it. I don't really, again, I don't look to food to be a source of entertainment. I look for nutrition. It's like saying you get bored of breathing air. I mean, I don't think about having flavored air.
I like that.
It's like, do you get bored of breathing? Well, no, I have to do it. It's part of it. I don't, again, I don't sit there and hand my dogs a menu and say, what would you guys like to eat today? And again, I just have to say, humans are animals just like anything else. And, it's again, it's a really tough concept to understand in this context, because people are so used to variety. But once you sort of step away from that and really get well nourished, you suddenly find that the thing that you want the most is meat. In fact, if I were to say, eat a meal and there would be no steak or meat in there, I'd be like, I didn't even eat. I mean, it's like I gave myself zero nutrition. When I go to the checkout line, I watch these people load up on crackers and sodas and chips, and they might have a few token fruits and vegetables in there, and then there's almost, they might have one little skinny thing of chicken in there, and I'm looking at it like there's literally no nutrition in your cart, and I'm just amazed. And you look at them, and they're either obese or they're frail, or it's just, this is where
I do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's you almost like this, want to just take them and shake them and say, wait, but you can't do that. It's fun. It's and the processed food companies and obviously the pharmaceutical companies sort of unfortunately benefit from the chronic disease we have. I mean, those guys pump billions of dollars into maintaining the status quo, and it's something that's, I mean, they're very convincing, and they've got giveaways and celebrities and huge advertising campaigns and huge budgets to do that, and it works very well. There's people out there that are excited to eat the next flavor of whatever potato chips is coming out. They get excited about it, and it's just it's a tough battle. I mean, it's really hard. I think as more and more people get into podcasts and get their information on social media, and there's more people that do this, there's some people that are stepping away from that, fortunately, but I think for the most part, I'm not hopeful. I mean, I'm hopeful, but I'm very guarded in that optimism, because I think there's a lot of money against it.
It's a minefield, right? I mean, this is, mate, I don't know where to go with this. I've got so many ways I want to go, because what you just said there. I mean, you stand there, and the funny thing is, once you step away from it and you actually understand it and look at it, if you're in the system and you're seeing all these things flash up 24/7 food, and the hardest, once you start eating that stuff, it's really hard to stop. If you just say that I'm not going to eat it, and you wait till you eat at home, as you said, eat your proper food, it's a different world. Once you start eating that stuff and you crave it a lot of time by association or habit, and then it goes, and as you said, these companies have got a lot of money ploughed into this to make sure that you eat their food, and oh man, I mean, you can go into this for fun. I was going to say, like with what you're talking about there, you've got these companies. I mean, used to be. Are you still a surgeon at the moment? I know you had to go through a few more tests. Have you got your surgeon license back?
Yeah, it's about to happen probably next month. It was just something I was asked to do an independent evaluation because a hospital and I had a big political argument.
Yes.
I disagreed with Well, I wanted to do more lifestyle type stuff, and as a surgeon,
Right.
they don't really pay you to do that. I made a lot of money for these guys. I was on billboards, and they had me on TV commercials. I was making tons of money for the hospital. And then when I stopped and said, "Wait a minute, I want to do lifestyle stuff, and I don't want to do so much surgery," they really didn't want me to do that, but I did it anyway. So we ended up having a big long legal battle over it. I ended up, separating Lee from the hospital. Filed a complaint with me. The state board got it and said, "Hey, look, you can go get yourself independently evaluated, or you can fight against the hospital again with us and it's going to take a couple of years to do it and cost you lots of money." So I said, well, let me just surrender my license, get evaluated independently, and I'll come back later. And so I got independently evaluated, and they said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine. So you can go back to practice. So I'll probably, get my license officially given back to me in the next month or two. And then depending on what, I may practice part-time because I really want to continue with this prevention stuff and do what I want to do and see if I can set up something outside of what I was doing, because it's just, you're very limited by what you're allowed to do, particularly, working in the system, because there's so many limitations on what you can do, and there's a lot of hassle that goes with it, and you have to fight a lot of battles. And so I think I can make as much or a bigger difference, on the outside than I can on the inside, which is interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. I also wanted people to understand that, because I know there's a few vegan people that have gone after you and saying, "Oh, this guy got struck off the surgeons, this, etc." They didn't really understand the story behind it, what happened, and how, because you were the head of the department, right?
Yeah, I was the head of the guy. They loved me, man. I had tons of happy patients. I had all the staff loved me, and so they had, it was kind of interesting. I was kind of very naive because they insidiously were building a case against me. It took about 6 months, and I didn't realize that. And I should have gotten a lawyer involved right away, but I didn't. I just kind of thought, well, I've got nothing but happy patients. I have very low complication rates. But what they do is they select out, they go and they select out, narrowly look at thousands of surgeries. Say, well, this one you had an error in. I'm like, well, yeah, everybody does. I mean, you do thousands of cases, there are going to be a few where people find, fault. So, but they did that, and then they presented all this information to people that have no idea what orthopedic surgery is. It was to a bunch of pediatricians and dermatologists, and said, well, these are the facts that we think you did wrong on, and we want you to get rid of them. And I was like, I wasn't even allowed to defend myself. I wasn't even allowed to look at the cases. I wasn't allowed to, have any information on what they were utilizing. And when I finally got that information, I saw how many errors they'd made. Responded with bunches of research papers and textbook articles, and then they were just like, well, we don't care anyway. We're still gonna we're gonna continue our decision, because if we say you're right, then you can sue us for millions of dollars. And so it was just a fiasco. And then I just got tired of fighting legal battles. I don't really like being involved with a bunch of legal battles. It's just a stressful, painful process. And, the quickest way for me to resolve that was to say, okay, I don't want the hospital involved. Let me get it evaluated independently. And that's what I did.
Well, it's just so much stress you don't need. And this is what people like, the people that are naive and they come out there and they write stuff. You're like, you haven't got a clue about the story. Sometimes it's just easy to walk away and even fight it. And they're like, if you were true, because it's costing you loads of money. And also, this is the problem with the system. Once you're out of it, Shaun, and you are, it's hard to go back in it, because you realise no matter how good you do, one little thing happens and they start to throw the kitchen sink at you, and it's all that work you've done, all that good is like for nothing, because it's ridiculous what they did. Having heard your story and understanding it, especially because what people don't realise is that this is why surgeons get paid more the more surgeries they do. So when someone like yourself comes out and starts saying, well, you know what, to your patients, you don't need this surgery, you need to change your diet and lifestyle, etc., and watch how these things fall away. They go, well, what are you doing? You're costing us money. Because surgery is a highly lucrative business, and people don't realise this, is that the medical industry is actually a medical business. Now, that's not saying that doctors are evil or anything. There's lots of good people in the industry doing a lot of good work, but it is a business. And when it comes down to it, they've got bills to pay, and that's the thing, And if you're out there saying, you know what, well, I did 5,000 surgeries this year, but next year I think I can half that if I give people the right diet and lifestyle advice, that's not going to bode well with them, especially when it comes down to them like taking their checks, right?
Yeah, I mean, surgery, particularly what I was in, orthopedic surgery, is very lucrative for hospitals. It almost keeps, there's two real specialties that are very procedure heavy, interventional cardiology and orthopedic surgery are probably the two biggest ones, and they make the most money for the hospitals. And, it supports a lot of the other activities, it pays the bills, and so really, when they hire you as a surgeon, they want you to do a lot of surgeries. I mean, there's a big push. And I was, really part of the efficiency. I developed a program for hospital efficiency. They loved me because I was like, doing a ton of surgeries. And I was the busiest guy in the whole hospital by far. I did more surgeries than anybody else. And then when I said, wait a minute, we're going to slow down on this stuff, it just didn't bode well with the administration. And, they were polite about it. Says, no, we don't really want you to do that. There's not much support. And I kept trying. And finally I just started saying, look, I'm just going to counsel people. And I started talking people out of surgeries that I didn't think. I thought that could possibly be treated with diet and lifestyle. And then that's when I get hit with this, this behind the back peer review stuff and went from there. And so it was kind of a wake up call for me that while I understand it was a business all along, it's just how much of a business it really is, and it's unfortunate. And like you said, there are many. In fact, the vast majority of physicians are great, wonderful people that really, really want to make a difference. It's just that the system nowadays has really gotten to where, it's about the money, and that's the bottom line. Is the bottom line. It always.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, that's an unfortunate thing. So if only they could see you now, they probably are looking at you now, wondering what's he doing. Because for a little while you said you were getting by on your savings and stuff, but now you've got quite a lot going on with helping people. You've got different websites, which I want to touch on in a minute. But just quickly, with the meat you eat, Shaun, what sort of quality are you looking at? Because surely, I think I heard you talking. I went back and did some research. Thought you heard you talking to Joe Rogan, saying that you don't really worry too much about the quality, whereas I'm quite stickler on that. So I'm gonna dig into you for this because especially in America. Over here it's not great, but in America, I'm going to talk because we look at things quite holistically. And you're saying that grass-fed isn't actually. You take what you can get because you're eating quite a lot of food, and it can be quite expensive. I'm guessing if you start eating really, really high quality food. But when you look at the grass-fed organic meat, your conventional meat in your CAFOs that are fed, they can legally be fed things that they can't legally feed you. For example, the cows are meant to be herbivores, right? So they're meant to chew the cud. They're meant to eat grass, but they can feed them rendered food. You go and look, research into what rendered food is. If you won't want to be eating that, plastic pellets, sawdust. They fill them with antibiotics, hormones, vaccines, etc. So eating an animal, and also they can be treated terribly from some of these places. They're not looked after. They're in their own feces a lot of the time. They're not outside. Compared to a cow that's been treated really well, eating the grass or at least grass finished, if not grass fed. The difference in quality there. They've done studies into the life force of this meat. The light that it gives off. And you look at organic grass-fed meat compared to all food compared to that. It is different, especially if you're eating a lot of that meat. Do you not notice, or why is it you don't really go into the quality of the meat?
Yeah, so and that's a good topic, and I think there's a lot of things that have to be looked at with that stuff, and so. Just like anything else, there are certain, what we call CAFOs, which are confined animal feeding operations. This is how a lot of these animals are finished. Now, we have to realize, and I'm gonna leave it specific to beef because that's probably what I think chickens have different issues, and I think pigs have different issues. But cattle in general, all cattle, regardless of how they're finished, are going to spend about 80% of their life out in pasture, so they spend most of their time out in the pasture. They're brought in for the last 2 to 3 months for where they fatten them up with the addition of grains in their diet. And so, and the way that is done is, they will start them out still in forage, which is still the grasses and the hays, and then they will gradually add in some grain in there because they can't tolerate too much. And in the end, they take about 10% of their total feed for their lifetime becomes grain. So it's still not as much as you'd think. Again, not all of those confined animal feeding operations are the same. You can't paint everybody broadly with one brush. There's some that do good. There are some that are bad guys, and so the ones that are bad guys are the ones that get the publicity, but there's just as many guys that are doing it right because and I've talked to a lot of these cattle ranchers and people that do this, and they have a vested interest in keeping those animals healthy and stress-free as much as they can, because when those animals are stressed out and sick, a lot of times they can't be utilized, and the farmers will lose money, and they're there to make a living. And so it's not that they're in there kicking the animals and covering them in feces and stuff like that. They're doing what they can to minimize that stuff, and there's more and more technology, and as the years have gone by, they've gotten better and better with that stuff. What they can eat, certainly, humans can eat sawdust. I mean, there's sawdust put in our processed food, just to put that argument. And there are plastic pellets that show up in different compounds in our food as well. So again, those ideally are not good for any animal species. Now, does eating their meat specifically after they're dead, does that impact human health? Does that impact my health? There's not really been any good studies that show that's the case. And in fact, the majority, because I've seen thousands upon thousands of people that have done this diet, and I did a poll the other day, and I asked, how many of you guys have gotten really good health results eating, grass-finished beef versus regular beef? 80% of the people said they got great health results eating grain-finished beef. So again, there's not been a formal study, but that's just an informal survey. But when I look at there's only, I think, only been one formal study that's actually done, and they looked at some health markers, biomarkers, and comparing grain-fed to grass-finished. And basically, the grain-finished one actually showed a little better outcome on health markers. Now, again, we have all these suppositions. We know that grass-finished beef has a little bit higher omega-3 to 6 ratio, but again, the numbers are so tiny and small. If you look at how much omega-3 and omega-6 is in beef, it's not very much. They're both essential. We have to have omega-6 in our diet. The problem we run into is the omega-6 oils coming from seed oils, like the vegetable oils, are so ubiquitous in all this processed food that those numbers get way, way, way elevated. And I had a nice guy, podcast with a guy named Tucker Goodrich, who's very much talks about seed oils and saying that, we got to cut out the processed food and the vegetable oils, and it's not a problem with the beef. As far as the hormones go, if you eat a grass-finished cow from England, some UK beef, you're still eating hormones. Don't pretend you're not eating hormones, because the animals endogenously make them. And so the question is, if I put an implant in that animal and add some more hormones to it, what difference does it make? Well, it makes a slight difference. It makes it, maybe increases that by about 20-30%. And if you look at the overall amount, you make estrogen every day, so do I. We all make estrogen. It's one of our hormones. So there's a calculation on how much beef would you have to eat to get the same amount of estrogen that you and I make every day. So you would have to eat 27 cows worth of beef every single day. That's a lot of meat, right? Mm-hmm. To get the equivalent amount of hormone that you would endogenously make anyway. So again, I don't think those things are truly a big issue. Now, there are some people, and I've certainly seen some people that have told me, I just feel better on grass-fed beef, and that's fine, grass-finished beef. And I think that's fine too. The other thing is, if I compare grain-finished meat, the cattle meat, to the Twinkies and the processed food, it's still far, far, far superior. Yeah. And there's people that can't afford this other stuff. And there's so many people that they can't afford $20-$30 a pound to pay for grass-finished beef, particularly if they're eating 2-3 pounds a day, like many of the people that do this. So it's got to be practical at the same time. Now, I will say, from an environmental impact, there's some arguments to be made for saying we need to better pasture those animals. And it doesn't even matter, even in the UK where all the animals, I think most of them are pastured the whole time, you've got to pasture them correctly. You've got to move them from location to location to location so that the carbon is returned to the soil, rather than just having them mow down, spend 2 weeks in one place, strip the land and then move them somewhere else. They have to be rotated correctly. So we can get better from an environmental standpoint, and I think we need to do that. And I think it's up to people that have a vested interest like myself that eat meat and want to continue to do so to push for those changes, because I think that's where the biggest things are going to come. But I do think that, if there is a difference between the two from a human health standpoint, I haven't seen it yet. It may remain to be proven. And maybe guys like us, the carnivore guys, that will test each other and say, hey, I'm going to eat nothing but grass-finished beef for 6 months and see how I do, and I'm going to eat nothing but grain for 6 months and see how I do, and see if there's truly a difference, because that's a good question and we need to find the answer to. I just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, I think
I know what I'd like it to say that only grass is the best for health, and then for that, but I have to go with what I can observe and what actually is happening. And so, there's a lot of theory behind this stuff.
Cool. I think like, what I've seen in certain cases when I've gone around, for example, I just feel like when an animal's doing what it's meant to be doing and it's loved and it's out there doing it, it's just going to be, of course you get hormones in animals and we produce them, etc. But it's like, certain things you do every day. I get what you're saying about the levels, 100%. And the grass finished and grass fed. I mean, it's very hard, even in our country, to feed cattle grass all year round. It's just almost impossible. Can you hear me, Shaun? Are you still there?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, cool.
Can you hear me?
The screen's just gone a little bit there. There was actually something that you said I wanted to jump on, but I can't remember. You said quite a lot, which I understand where you're coming from. I do, especially because it does get expensive. But yeah, eating meat of any kind is going to be far superior to eating processed, refined foods that are devoid of any nutrition, any enzymes whatsoever. But when you look at it's just a lot of times you said the chickens and the cows, and when you look at some of these, I mean, America's, I think the laws are a bit worse than what we've got over here, is in terms of what they can do. And a lot of these companies, I know that there's 5 food companies that control 90% of the world's food supply, and some of the things that they've turned farming into an industrial complex rather than to farming, and this is the problem. And I think a lot of that meat ends up probably in fast food chains that you're probably not buying. I'm gonna guess if you go to the butchers, it's gonna probably be produced by people that do actually care. And you say it makes sense for a butcher to look after his animals because that's his livelihood, right? It's not gonna do it. But some of the things you see, I don't know if you've seen even these documentaries, even back in the day when Farmageddon was out and they were showing the chicken pens and what they in 80% in like their feces. They're saying that all you've got to do is feed a cow grass for a week and 80% of the E. coli goes. Instead of that, they're spraying this beef with ammonia to try and get rid of it. And so you just got to be careful with that. We're going to that. But I do understand what you're saying in terms of you're cutting out a lot of this stuff anyway. And if you're feeling good on it, that's the thing I was going to say. You said your digestion's fine. Your digestion's absolutely fine. You go to the toilet once a day. You have no problems. Because I to be honest with you, I do have a lot of people that eat far too much meat. Once we start to add fibre in and take certain things out, their gut clears up. I mean, probably because they've been so inflamed from doing a lot of things wrong that their gut's struggling. But for someone who's been eating this way for 2 years now, you have no issues at all.
No, I don't. And I think one of the problems we have with looking at how foods impact our digestive tract. I think there are a lot of the problems with digestion have to center around gastrointestinal motility. And I think some of the things that impact the nervous system, we see people that develop diabetes and other things where they develop things like gastroparesis. They have decreased gastrointestinal mobility. They have peripheral neuropathy, and I think those things all share a common process. And so when you're developing all these problems, the nerves that are impacted in your body, there's plenty of nerves that go to your digestive tract. And when those nerves are injured, the gastrointestinal motility goes down. There are some things that cause mucosal inflammation on the inside of the guts as well. So you have a combination of those things that are going on. And again, I think if you're eating these industrial seed oils, lots of high fructose corn syrup and all that stuff, it wreaks havoc on, both the gastrointestinal mucosa, but also the, the nervous system. And I think those things combine to cause all these gastrointestinal issues. And it may take a while for those things to get better. I've seen people improve peripheral neuropathy, where they can feel their feet again. You go on an all-meat diet. We also see things like irritable bowel syndrome going away. And there's some, I think fiber is very controversial. I think it's context dependent. I think depending on what your baseline diet is, fiber can be a positive. But I think for many people, fiber can be just as much of a negative. And for many people, it has been in reducing the fiber has been quite helpful for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I see people take Cinnamon Husk sometimes, and I cringe. I'm like, it can really hurt someone's bowel. A lot of that fibre, but yeah, that's what I wanted to say to you before when you talked about seed oils. Yes, there's a lot of, rapeseed, things like that, canola oil. It's just, in my experience and the research I've done, it's just poison, and people are eating this in abundance, and they're cooking their foods in it, and it's just, you want to be ill? Keep eating that stuff. Keep frying your foods in that stuff. Keep cooking with that stuff. I take that out straight away. Those sort of oils, they're terrible. And as you say, the funny thing you talk about there about digestion as well is, as we look at it, most foods that people have intolerances to, they're not meats. They're not chickens and beefs and porks. They're plants. Because if we go back into it, and we talk about, we take a step back, we look at it and say, well, how does an animal protect itself if you wanted to kill it? It has teeth, it has claws, it can run away from you. Plants don't have that. Plants have built into them different chemicals, different molecules that when you eat them, if you wanted to eat them, for example, you can't digest them. And if you don't want to eat them again, it's a defense mechanism for saying, look, you don't want to eat me because I'm going to give you problems. Whereas an animal, they've got their teeth, etc., and they can fight you if you want. So, that's their defense mechanism. So once you kill it, and as you say, a lot of people I deal with, their gut are so inflamed anyway that you give them anything and they're having problems. So you have to really go back to basics and strip it away, and deal with it that way. But yeah, food intolerances, generally, you're looking at plants, or you're looking at different food groups, but not generally. People don't have. I mean, egg whites, they do. Yeah, one of the most energetic foods on the planet. You've got things like coffee. Dairy, yeah, one of the most, but very rarely someone eats chicken and has problems, or beef. And when you get down to it, it's how you feel. And I know people say it's like it's antidotal and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, everyone's a study of one. I don't care what it's at, and no study's going to tell you better than you how your body feels and how you're living. And it's a big thing. Having talked to Phil and having been in that group, I think it's 100% carnivore. I think it's like that. Everyone in that group is feeling better, is looking better, and maybe maybe after 5 years they might stop and they might have to do whatever. And as you said, I've heard you say you're not militant with this. You're not adverse to change if you need to. You're someone who's gonna go by how you feel, right? And you're going to have to look into things and see how you say that you're a work in progress, right?
No, absolutely. I think we all should be. I think, here's the thing. I would disagree with you a little bit about meat. Some people have issues digesting it initially, and I think some of that has to do with a lot of people develop difficulty in secreting hydrochloric acid. There's a lot of people that have had medical issues, and so their hydrochloric acid production goes down. And they have difficulty, tolerating that. Same thing with too much fat. They have problems producing lipase and bile and stuff like that. So those things become induced secondary to, eating the wrong way for years and years and years. And so some people initially will find that they really have a hard time digesting and tolerating, meat in particular. But I don't think it's an inherent thing for human beings. I think it's just something that can be acquired. Yeah, absolutely. I find that, and I've seen, again, thousands of people have done this. Not all of them stay strict meat only, like I've been mostly. They will find that it works for them really well. It may help to heal an inflamed, irritated gut. And they may find that they can tolerate a few more things. And I think that's perfectly appropriate and perfectly fine. And if it were me and I would, say, hey, maybe I want to try, some raspberries here and there. And I do fine with that. That's fine by me too. I don't have any objection to doing that. You just have to be objective and say, how does it really affect you? And not to say, well, I really want to eat this cheesecake, and now that I hope I can do this. But I mean, I think you have to, just be objective about it, and you can improve. And there's no, if anything, or if nothing else, a meat-only diet is probably the best elimination diet on the planet because it's well tolerated, it's nutritionally complete. Certainly in my view, it is, and you can really narrow down what's giving you problems. When you're trying to do an elimination diet and you still have, you just eliminate one item out of a diet that has 100 things in it. You're like, well, what about those other 99 things? Which one's giving me the problem? When you go to just, like a meat-only diet, then you're pretty quickly able to determine, okay, now I know if I eat oxalates, almonds or spinach or whatever, those things give me a problem. Those things make my knees hurt. Then you can eliminate that from your diet, and you can figure that out pretty easy. Whereas, you might say, well, I can tolerate a little bit of fruit and it doesn't bother me. But if you have all these things in the mix all the time, it becomes difficult. So I think, giving, if you're interested in doing an all meat diet, give it 90 days or so. I think that's a sufficient time for most people to really get an idea. And then play around, try to add something back in, see how you do. If your body doesn't like it, you're probably not meant to eat it. If it does, then have fun.
Yeah, 100%. And that's just to go back, I do agree with you about that meat and hydrochloric acid completely. Like it's most, I mean, it is one of the things that takes longer to digest. That's why you probably say full for, well, it is why you say full for longer. I completely get that. In fact, a lot of the time as well, I mean, I don't know if you go into it much. If you're just eating meat, then you won't have to. But food combining, lots of times people are combining the foods in such a way that your digestion just can't break it down. It's just like, and they wonder why they're getting gas, bloating, wind, different issues. And as you say, if your hydrochloric acid isn't right, you're going to get issues there. So I do completely agree with what you're saying there. I mean, just to reckon, I know you've got to go in a minute. Sure, you're busy. You've got a few interviews to do. Heard you saying something when did some research, and you're talking about how our red meat consumption has actually gone down a lot compared to what it used to be, and you're looking at one place, Hong Kong. You said they got the highest red meat consumption, and they actually have got great longevity. Is this right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. That at least from the U.S. standpoint, our meat consumption from about 1975 till now has dropped about 30%. It's a significant drop in our quantity of red meat consumption. We've made it up for that by eating more chicken, which I think is an inferior product. But as our red meat consumption has gone down, obviously we've seen an increase in obesity and diabetes and other chronic diseases. So it's hard to, at least from that standpoint, say, well, red meat's a problem because we're eating less of it, but we're getting more of these problems. But yeah, it's also true that Hong Kong certainly enjoys one of the highest life expectancies in the world, if not the, depending on which set of statistics you leave, but they live a long time. And they clearly eat lots and lots of meat, whether it's pork or red meat. I saw one statistical breakdown where they ate, I think, the third highest amount of meat on the world, only behind Argentina and Uruguay, which were the two biggest consumers in the world. And then it was Hong Kong, and then I think it was like the United States and Australia. But they eat significantly more than we do in the United States, and they live longer than anybody else on the planet, just about. And so it's again, you have to look at things outside of just diet as predictors of longevity. Yeah,
awesome, mate. And just quickly, no supplements. You don't take any supplements? No vitamin C? No scurvy?
Yeah, no scurvy. I didn't develop any scurvy. No one really has. It's just kind of it goes back to you guys in the UK, the limeys. That once they started doing the long sea voyages, eating. Well, it was the difference between dried meat and fresh meat. And if you eat meat that's in the supermarket that hasn't been dried out for a long period of time, you're going to be fine with regards to scurvy. But I don't take any supplements except for salt. I mean, if you want to call salt a supplement, I put salt on my food sometimes, and that's it. But I don't take vitamins. I don't take hormones. I don't take, anything. I just basically some meat, and I train hard, and that works well.
Awesome, mate. And just for people out there, you mentioned a couple of websites. Where's best for people to find you apart from Instagram, or if they want to try this, any groups you can recommend, etc. for them?
Yeah, so we've got a pretty large Facebook group. It's a little over 10,000 people. We started it in January. We've already grown over 10,000. It's called the World Carnivore Tribe, and so we've got all kinds of people that are new to carnivory, and a lot of long-term carnivores in there, helping people kind of transition over and kind of going through the common benefits and some of the issues that people are having. We've got, I just started a group yesterday. In fact, it's called the Restoration Health Vegan Recovery Group, and we have a lot of ex-vegans that have joined up now, and they're meeting with each other and trying to help each other kind of transition away from veganism, because sometimes a lot of people that are vegan and then they go away, they get attacked. They get attacked pretty hard by the people that are still vegans, and they really give them a hard time. So we wanted a nice sort of safe, sort of nurturing, supportive place for these people to go. And we've already, like I said, one day I've got nearly 100 people signed up for that group. Meatheals.com, which is a wonderful group to read about all these stories that we have done. I've got Twitter. It's SBakerMD on Twitter. I'm fairly active on Twitter. And then, my other website, it's Shawn, SHAWN Baker, BAKER.com, and that's where I've just written out, I've started writing a little bit of scientific, references to scientific study and kind of developing some topics that people are interested in. And then I've got, there's some people that want to consult with me one-on-one, so I've kind of do that in a limited capacity, and I do a little bit a couple times a week. I'll just, people chat with me for an hour to kind of help with diet and lifestyle and health and exercise. I've got an experience of, years of being a physician and being a top-level athlete and years of studying nutrition, and so it's kind of a, place for people to come, and we just kind of sort things out for them. So that's another deal that's going on.
No, awesome, mate. And just because I wanted to touch this, we haven't got the time. It's just if you go on Shaun's Instagram and you see some of the vegans that are attacking him, I say these people are. We talked about this a lot with Paul Chek. You familiar with Paul Chek?
Yeah, I know of Paul Chek. I've seen a little bit. I can't say I followed and read a bunch of his work, but I know, basically some of the stuff he does.
Talks about it being very tribal and people like wanting to to really hold on to something, because obviously in today's world we're all sort of there's people beliefs and stuff of people don't know who to follow, so it's something they really hold on to. And some of the things I've actually seen people write to is quite vital. Talking about like some people said, if my daughter ate meat, I'd have her killed. Isn't that right? Something like that. They wrote some vital stuff on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I think I think there that's obviously a person who has some mental health issues, but it's just to point out that there are people that are, they take things too far. And like I said, I don't really care what people eat. You eat whatever makes you feel healthy. If it's vegan and you do great, I'm fine with that. I just think you should be aware of the potential pitfalls. Mm-hmm. But if you want to eat all meat, that's fine. If you want to eat all meat and a few vegetables and fruits, that's fine with me too. I don't really care. Like I said, the ultimate thing is let's find out what works for you the best. And for some people, eating a meat-heavy diet works extremely well, and I think we should explore that and continue to allow those people, because there are people literally out there that are like, my life has changed dramatically. I'm out of pain for the first time in a decade. I can walk again.
Haven't some of these people been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 30 years?
Yeah. I mean, there are people who have been doing it for decades and doing great. And, again, it's this is what we have, in Western stuff. But I mean, you could argue there are people that have done it for thousands of generations. If we look at, the polar people and some of the African populations. And so it's clearly something you can do for years without getting deficiencies and do fine. And, the question is, well, how long are you going to live? Well, if you look at those populations, they're mostly, they criticize the Inuit, in one because they didn't live as long as their neighbor Canadians. They lived 10 years shorter. I said, well, they have double the smoking rate. They live in a one-room shack clustered in there, so they have much higher incidence of infectious diseases. They're in abject poverty. And so all those things decrease your life expectancy. It doesn't matter. You can look at the population of India, which has the most vegetarians in the world, and their life expectancy is the exact same. So you're like, well, why aren't they living forever if they're all mostly vegetarian? So it's again, there's more that goes into longevity than just what your diet is.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, Shaun. I look forward to keeping following you and seeing what you get up to in the future. And we're definitely trying to get you back on the show in the future. But thank you very much for coming on, mate. And have a great day and enjoy the rest of your shows you do.
All right, Ryan. Appreciate it. My pleasure. Okay, take care.
So, guys, here's that little bonus clip that I promised you. It's got some gems in it. So just stay tuned, and I'll see you at the end of this.
Less plaque, and so that.
I missed you there. He had carotid artery disease.
He had carotid artery disease with plaque in there, clogged up. And when he went on an all-meat diet, that started to go away and gotten better. So that's one anecdote, but we're going to get more and more of these things. It's really going to make some people really think.
Yeah,
probably make some vegans' heads explode, perhaps.
Well, if it works as well, if it works for you, there's a great book, Fat and Cholesterol. Fat and cholesterol good for you. There's loads of them at the top, and they talked about atherosclerosis and things, and about how it's never been. I mean, Ansel Keys just cherry picked the studies that he wanted. I think 7 studies out of the 21 that showed what he wanted, and it was like, oh, that works. It's like, well, that's basically what they've been doing for. We talk about with Paul Chek, and we talk about with a lot of people. Scientists these days, most of them, it's like modern day prostitutes. You can pay them to get whatever results you want, or it's just like because. As people talk about there's all studies after 1950. It's like they're all bought and paid for. You look at them and you see a study come out saying, "Oh, fat's bad for you." It's like, who's done that? And it's like the people that promote canola oil or something like that. It's like, well, and people don't even look into that. They just see the popcorn headline. I like to call it. It's a big popcorn headline, and you see it all the time. And it's just like, when you're going to stop reading that and actually do the research underneath it, and people come out with it, you're like, oh, you need to dig deeper and understand, why is it all the people that I talk to, the healthiest people in the world, no matter what they're doing, they're all eating coconut oil and having lots of saturated fat, and they're all phenomenal, they look good, they feel good, and all the ones that are not, and they're all eating margarine, and they're all having canola oil, etc., they all feel terrible, and they all look terrible, and they've got skin eruptions.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly. I mean, the pharmaceutical stuff, unfortunately, it was kind of interesting because up until even a few years, I mean, they may have still been able to get away with this, but, they didn't have to publish everything they produced. They would get a study and they would, if it didn't show the results they wanted, they just threw it in the trash can, and they only published what they wanted you to see. And so there's a lot of problems with what we call the evidence. And, I think that's why these N=1 tested on yourself are probably, for most people, the best way to go. And I think it's...
the American Heart Association, the head of it, He had a heart attack.
He had a heart attack last year. Yeah, a little while ago. Yeah,
as much as you don't want to be like a smug bastard, you're sitting there going, mate, it's like karma's a bitch, and they showed that they're funded by those. But for like $1 billion a year, I think it was. I did a video on it. I had to go back and look at the research on it, but I think it was a lot. It was a lot of money, a year they were putting into it.
Yeah, unfortunately there's a lot of conflict. I looked at the lobbying dollars in the U.S. and the pharmaceutical industry by far exceeded everyone else by orders of 5 times as much as a defense lobbyist. It was like pharmaceutical number one, like $280 million, and it was the health insurance industry number 2 with like $100 million, and everybody else was well below that, like 50 million, 40 million. So they spend the most money out of anybody just to keep that drug piggy bank going.
So guys, that was just a little clip that we were having a little discussion between ourselves at the end, and I just wanted to get a few little points out there as well about atherosclerosis and blocked arteries, and about the American Heart Foundation, American Heart Association, I should say. So yeah, that was Dr. Shaun Baker. I mean, I'm sure you got a lot out of that, as you do with all of our interviews. But this is probably a new phenomenon to some of you, the carnivore diet, the all meat diet. To be honest with you, it's very similar to parasite protocols, fungal protocols, when you're starving these pathogens of their food. But some people are going, depending on your genetics, depending on where you are, how your body is reacting, where your health is, this is going to work for people. Not everyone, but it's going to work for people. And the amount of people he's got in the Facebook groups he's mentioned on his websites, www.meatheals.com, and the carnivore diet. I mean, these people aren't lying. They've got some huge results, so it's a very interesting part. And I like to do across the board what works for most people. So 95% of my client base, we do things a certain way. But for the people that we need to go into little different directions, and maybe we go vegan or we go carnivore, these are different options that you've always got. But as I say, you need to go through the process and find out really what works for you, and you need to do that through having a structure. And these are the things why I always say to people, you need to work with a professional who has got a structure in place. I mean, if you can do it yourself, great, but a lot of the time I find a lot of people messaging me, they've been throwing mud at the wall and hoping some of it sticks. They don't know what's what, they get a bad reaction, don't know if they should stop, if they should carry on. They're going through a healing crisis, and it's really important why you should, whether it be us or whether it be someone else, to work with a health professional when you're trying to heal yourself from these things. Because also, first of all, it gives you accountability and support. And second of all, the people we talk to and ourselves, we've been doing this for a long period of time. We've worked with people with all different chronic illnesses, and it's something that we have plans and processes in place. And although we have that, we always say there's no standard process because there's no standard human being. And so if you need to navigate certain issues or you hit some turbulence, that's completely normal, and we know how to deal with that. And that's something that a lot of people don't know how to do themselves. So anyway, guys, that was Dr. Shaun Baker. I'm going to get him back on the show at a later date because I want to see some of the progress he's made and what's been going on in his life, because it's a really interesting story. And next week, guys, we've got the second part of our interview with Erin and Jess from Your Sacred Witness, where I am actually interviewing them, and it is actually, as I say, a humdinger. It's a really good interview. We go deep into lots of different topics, and we get them to share lots of different, basically their journey, and it's a really, really strong episode. So looking forward to that, guys, okay? So otherwise, as always, stay happy, guys, stay healthy. If you need anything from us, I'm at www.reviveyourself.co, or hit me up with an email at ryan@reviveyourself.co if you're dealing with any chronic health issues and you would like some help. Otherwise, guys, as I said before, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
If you're struggling with gut issues, such as gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, and want to finally be able to eat the foods you love without the crippling after effects, then don't forget to head over to reviveyourself.co and pick up your free copy of The Healing Health Paradigm today.